Welcome, everybody. Hi. I think I have to talk more softly. Is that better? Okay. I'm not very good at talking softly, but my name is Francie Brown Holmes, and I am happy to say I'm the president of the Farmington Land Trust. Thank you. Welcome to the 51st annual meeting of the corporation. How wonderful we're able to be together in person as well as the people online. So the business meeting will now be called to order. And I'd like to note we have a quorum of over 25 members of the corporation here. So the election results, drum roll, are going to be read by Steve Nelson, the secretary.
Good evening. As I call your name, would you please stand? So our members, our new members, for new members as well as new term members. Sally Chase for her first 3-year term. Peter Dorpalen for his second 3-year term. John Estrelada for his second 3-year term. Liz Bennett for her first 3-year term. Emily Collini for her first 3-year term. Barbara Nicholson for her first 3-year tour. No, I didn't think so.
She couldn't come tonight.
No, okay. And Richard Kramer as our board emeritus for a 3-year term. They will be joined by continuing directors, Patty Boy Williams, Jim Calciano, Evan Coles, Bob Hannon, Jessica Harrison, Francie Brown Holmes, Steve Nelson, Jen Villa. The directors met to elect officers for the coming year just before the meeting. They are Francie Brown Holmes as president, Evan Coles as vice president, John Estrelada as treasurer, and batting cleanup and MVP and fan favorite, Steve Nelson as secretary. The standing committees are executive, Francie Brown chair, Francie Brown Holmes chair. Evan Coles is acquisitions. Stewardship is Steve Nelson. Financial is John Estrelada. And governance is Liz Bennett, chair of that as well. That ends my introduction. You bet.
So before John comes up to give us the treasurer's report, I just want to thank you, John, for the countless extra hours that you put in. I really think the amount of hours you put in are beyond infinity for all the extra work you did. And Iris Payande, who is the bookkeeper, she's not here tonight, but she also put in a lot of hours. But thank you, John.
All right, thanks, Francie. And good evening, everyone. I'm going to keep this really brief, right? Because I see that everyone brought their financial statement that we mailed out. Oh, we got one. That's great. Oh, two. All right, right on. So we're going to keep this brief. I know it's a great topic to talk about. So the statement of financial highlights for 2021 was distributed in the mail. If you didn't get a copy, feel free to touch base with me or anyone on the board, and we'll make sure you get a copy of that. But it really does summarize the financial health of the Farmington Land Trust, and I'm here to and pleased to report to you tonight that the finances of the Land Trust are very strong. So that's very, very strong. And this is really fueled by a lot of the things that happen in a room like this, right? It's you, our members, through the membership dues, right? The donations and the very generous donations for many of the members here tonight, as well as our business partners and our community partners at large. And of course, and you'll hear a lot more of it later, is all the efforts that Kate and the fundraising committee have done, not only in 2021, but over all the prior years. So all of that is really fueling all the things that we need to do to get the business done, the operations and so forth of the Land Trust. As such, we are positioned to continue our mission of protecting open space in our community, in Farmington and in Unionville. So really good news on that, particularly the 67 plus parcels of land that we currently manage and oversee, which includes in 2021, we recently acquired or was donated to us the property which we call the quarry parcel on Farmington Avenue across the street generally from the UConn Medical Center. But anyway, again, great news to report to the members. Your contributions, your efforts are really going to good use, and the board is making sure that that happens. With that, if you have any questions for me, feel free to see me later regarding the finances of the Land Trust, and anytime afterwards, of course, you can call on me. With that, I'll turn it back over to Francie.
Thanks, John. So we want to go back, just pedal back for a second and add someone's name to the newly elected officers. So Steve, could you please come back up?
So my interim as MVP is short-lived. We did overlook our best and newest board of directors our director is Mike Randage. Mike, our apologies for that. May I be excused?
You may be excused.
Thank you.
So this past year, we have all been through a lot, each and every one of you, and our Land Trust organization as well. And I'd like to take a minute now to honor and remember and acknowledge all the losses that the Farmington Land Trust has gone through over the past year. The deep sadness we feel for losing Liz Dolphin, our executive director, Charlie Leach, a foundational member and avid supporter of the Land Trust, and Marcy Schwartz, board member, Jim Calciano's beloved wife and longtime Farmington Land Trust supporter and friend. We also say goodbye, but only so long, to Diane Tucker, our naturalist and board secretary. And we are sad to see Lisa Johnson, our president last year, resign, as she needed to focus solely on family health issues. These changes brought changes, and I was elected interim president by the board to replace Lisa. Diane Nelson generously stepped in to replace me as recording secretary. So let's just take a moment of silence to hold our friends in your mind's eye and in your heart, because each has contributed so much to the Land Trust. While our 51st year has been a bit bumpy and stormy with the amount of loss and change, the silver lining is that we are resilient and we are a mighty organization. I think that was just, And what really contributes to this might is the dynamic duo in the office. We are delighted that Megan, our it's a little bit of a word, developmental administrative assistant for the past year, will be continuing on. And Kate, who stepped in for Liz Dolphin as interim director last summer, accepted the position as executive director this fall. Yay, Kate. And as you all know, as a board member, Kate had been actively engaged in the land trust from the get-go. Now, as executive director, she's bringing forth even more creativity, positivity, keen intellect, guidance, and focused direction for our mission. So here is a view into what we've accomplished in the last year, all of which is in accordance with our mission: to protect open space through acquisition, stewardship, education, and advocacy. In April, to remember our living room annual meeting Zoom, when we celebrated our 50th birthday with a special toast, with special toast glasses delivered to your door. In May, we launched our capital campaign to renovate the Wilcox-Bushley homestead at our Toasting Our Treasures golf course extravaganza fundraiser. Do you remember the ribbons on the carts? This was our first foray back into an in-person gathering after a year of meeting online. Besides the delight of zooming around the golf course in the carts, we kicked off the capital campaign with a generous donation from Ion Bank of $25,000. And I'm happy to say the capital campaign has been successful to date in raising more than $500,000 towards our goal of $1.3 million. Thank you to the contributions of many dedicated land trust donors. Yeah. To give you an update, the farmhouse renovation is underway. We have obtained appropriate permits thanks to the diligent and detailed site plans of Biff Schlesinger. We have preserved many important items stored in the Cary garage, and architectural plans were created by Sheldon Crosby with the help of Hillary Donald. Our next few steps include the septic upgrade, restoration of the barn, connecting water to town water. And if you're ever looking for Steve Nelson, Jim Calciano, or Evan Coles, the primary team of the Wilcox-Bushley Building Project, guess where you'll find them? At the Wilcox-Bushley Farmhouse. When you have a chance, the plans are in the back of the room. So continuing and expanding our educational focus, a few highlights of our programs were the Bird Whisperer and the Airbnb presentation by Girl Scout Raven Bartow, who created our bee hotel at the Wilcox-Bushley homestead for her Gold project. We also did forest bathing, yoga on the land, and our first collaboration with Hillstead Museum with the Birds of Prey program. In the fall, we hosted our first fall flower fundraiser. Gorgeous flowers were given to us by our board member, Jen Villa. Thank you, Jen. Who owns Farm Truck and Hine Farm. Professional flower arranger Mary Ann Haar donated her time and talent to teach us the art of flower arranging, which will be coming back next year. In December, we hosted a charcuterie board fundraiser at the Wilcox-Bushley homestead. Those picking up their boards were invited to view the farmhouse, decorated primarily by Diane Nelson in holiday holly, candlelight, and rustic finery. The charcuterie boards were partially donated by Emily's Catering. How extensive, how diverse, and how fun these are. As you can see, we're tailoring our programs and events to include the whole wide age range, focusing more on family fun, education, and opportunities to be out on the land. Stewardship. Protecting the land is central to our mission. With the generous financial contributions of the Adopt a Parcel program, we have been able to dedicate more resources to the maintenance of our properties. We're happy to announce that Girl Scout Troop 61106 has adopted our Will Warren's Den parcel. We've begun developing a trail on the Clatter Valley parcel. Bobby Emery, one of the volunteers on this project, remembers the old trail from when she was little, walking in the woods on her family's ancestral land. The fishing pier parcel needs repair, and with the help of Bob Hannon, Sarah Hanks, Tom Zip, and Jeff Sager, and several board members, we plan to create a pier that will be accessible to all. And thanks to the hard work of Liz Dolphin, we were awarded a grant from the Hartford Audubon Society to develop a bird-friendly garden at our West District Nature Preserve. Board members Steve Silk, Jen Villa, and Master Gardener Linda Aparo created a plan. The area was cleared of invasives by a group of hard-working volunteers. Cardboard was laid to suppress the weeds, and organic mulch applied in preparation for the planting native species this coming month. Steve Nelson, I forgot all the words you just used to describe yourself, but, oh, okay, MVP. Thank you, Steve. Has been working hard to ensure stewardship of our 67 properties. This year's Girl Scout Troop 61106, along with Bill Wadsworth, are co-stewarding the Will Warren Den parcel. And Noah Wallace will become stewards of the Bull Lot. We're always looking for volunteers to be active in the land trust. Becoming a steward of a parcel is a concrete and tangible way to volunteer and to be connected on our land. And in the realm of community outreach and advocacy, we continue to develop relationships with area organizations in a more steadfast manner. We're co-hosting programs with the Hillstead, working with the Farmington Public Schools, Miss Porters, CCSU, and UConn to provide a natural space for studying the environment, and hosting our 3rd annual Reel-to-Reel film contest with the original 8 Farmington Valley towns for 12 to 18-year-olds. Over the past year, kindergarten teacher Sally Shaves and Nancy Nelson have been walking their students to the Bull Lot parcel, as well as to the West District Nature Preserve, to participate in experiential learning in nature. And as an aside, I had the delightful time the other week to go with the little kindergartners, and honestly, their excitement is just so cute. They say, "Are those poops? They look like jelly beans." I don't know. I mean, just as one example, they're so excited and they're so curious. So anyway, additionally, we continue our work with the town of Farmington on land acquisition committee to ensure the future protection of open space. And this year, the Rotary Club of Farmington gifted us a tree of our choice to be planted on one of our parcels. As part of marketing and communication objectives, Peter Dorpalen, chair of the sign committee, has been working diligently and thoroughly to develop markers and property signs for each of the FLT properties, making headway on this slowly and surely. True to the Farmington Land Trust's mission and spirit, it is with vision, determination, and an eye on the prize that we keep thriving. So before we adjourn the business part of the meeting, are there any questions or comments from any members from the floor? And if there are, please come up to the mic. No, I'm about to do that. Okay. Could you hear that? Okay. Departing board members. That's what he was just whispering to me about. So Kate Grady-Benson is going to talk about our departing board members, and I would just like to take a minute, even though we talked about Kate before, is formally I would like to introduce our new executive director of the Farmington Land Trust, Kate Grady-Benson.
Speech. Okay, here's my speech. It's wonderful to be here tonight, and thank you everyone for coming. And for those of you who are viewing in remotely, we wish you could be here, but we're glad you're tuning in via Zoom. I am honored to be the executive director. I had some big shoes to fill from the past. One of them is in here. There he is. Bruce. But anyway, yeah, the land trust is a passion for me, and I know it is for all of you, and for these two people who have contributed greatly to the land trust over the past 9 years. I'm just going to talk just briefly about each of them. I'm going to start with Diane Tucker, because Diane, she has, or was with the land trust almost 9 years, came on to the land trust in 2016. And from the moment she entered the room, her wisdom about nature and about all things, honestly, I mean, you could wax philosophic at any point, was amazing. And we're missing you, Diane, but thank you for all your years of contributions to the Land Trust. As the person who's been in charge of the education programs, we are really missing you, but I know that you're contributing and doing some programs for us, even though you're not on the board. So thank you for keeping your hand in the pie, so to speak. Could you come forward? I have something for you. So just a word of warning to the new board members. You know, you might get off the board, but you can run, but you can't hide. So. Oh, yay, okay, good. And then the next person I want to honor tonight is Steve Silk. Steve is going off after 9 years on the board, doing a variety of things, but primarily being in charge of the newsletter, the Steward, which you all have received over the years. Amazing publication, so well written, so well laid out. You know, based on his background, it didn't surprise any of us, but that contribution has been invaluable to spreading the word about the land trust and about all things conservation. For that, we thank you, and we will miss you, but you can't hide either, Steve, so stay tuned. But so Steve has contributed greatly to a variety of things. Presently, he's working on a planting program with Gem Villa out at the Bushley property, the place that actually Francie referenced in the grant from the Autobahn, that we're planting a garden that's bird friendly, and he is part of that in a big way and has been a part. Anytime we need advice about what plants to choose and how to lay it out, Steve has been our person. So Steve, thank you for all you've given to the Land Trust. We look forward to working with you in the future. Could you come forward, please?
And now to the Citizens of the Year awards. Jim Calciano will be giving these awards to
So we have two, which is a little unusual, but they have certainly earned it. The two recipients will be Biff Schickinger and L'Arc Architects, headed, in this case, who's the lead person, Shelton Crosby, and of course Hillary. I know they've been waiting for this forever. They have earned the recognition. There's one thing, that party that we had, I think, 2 years ago on the Wilcox-Bushley farm, when you made you offered your services. We can help.
The broken arm didn't hurt.
Yeah, you guys came to the table and have done an incredible job. And one thing about BIF, which is kind of interesting. 35 years ago, my first project, meeting some, I don't know how old you were, 35 or so?
12.
Yeah, whatever. It was his first job as a planner on a small project I was doing in Simsbury. And, you know, we kind of drifted apart, and here we are, full circle. So, it's a pleasure working with both of you. It is amazing. People have no idea the amount of work that goes into the town and all the people, the inspectors, and working with a committee, even though we're pretty well versed, right? You get a lot more people on you. It's difficult. They've done very well. I haven't seen anyone throw their hands up yet, but it's still, we have a ways to go yet. But pleasure.
It's all legal.
They've done a great job, really.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Anything to say, go ahead.
In thanking you all, I have to tell you, it's quite an honor just to be able to do this for you. I can't tell you how much joy we get in being able to offer of whatever we can to the land trust and to the town and to you, our friends, and our community. If we can't take care of our friends, who can we take care of? That'll be the end of me.
Can I just go?
It was a real joy. It was. And I told Steve also for stewardship, if you get a small parking lot, I could sweep once in a blue moon, then I'm up for that too. Okay? But thank you.
So at this point, we need a motion to adjourn the business part of the meeting. So is there a motion to adjourn? And is there a second? All those in favor? All those opposed? Anybody abstain? So the business meeting part of the meeting is closed. I think I might do that too. But and now Kate will introduce our speaker. Thank you, Kate.
Would anyone like to get another drink or some more food? If you do, just feel free to go. We will. But yes, we will be putting the dessert out, so you may want the sweets too. So I have the pleasure of introducing Nancy, and Nancy, I believe it's DeBrule-Clemente. Oh, thank you, I have my glasses on and I don't see it. She comes to us tonight to talk about all things organic, which is exactly up our alley as conservationists and people concerned about the earth and climate change and all the things that are happening now. Nancy is a UConn grad, and when she graduated, she went into the landscaping world. She, in 1983, started Natureworks, which is in Northford, Connecticut. I don't know if any of you have been there, but it's an amazing spot. She started it in a converted gas station. Brava, I have to say. I mean, you were starting well, and then you over the years in 1990 moved into an older home, renovated it, and made that into your space, which is beautiful. Natureworks is a spot that you can purchase and learn about natives and organic gardening, and Nancy is an expert in that area. She is a garden designer, a noted authority on organic gardening, and a frequent speaker at a variety of either land trust or garden groups or whatnot. But you know, I don't think I'm doing you due justice, and I know that you're an amazing speaker, so I'm going to have you come up, Nancy, and fill our minds with some wonderful and beautiful things so that we kind of know how to do this. Thank you.
let's see. This is the first in-person talk I've given in 2.5 years. I've been Zooming. So thank you for inviting me. It was like dragging me out of my cave. I live in Middletown, and Northford is part of North Branford. So, you know, I haven't really been to many places. I have a new car with less than 10,000 miles on it, and it was bought in 2020, January. Also, the timing couldn't be any better because tomorrow's Earth Day. Think about it. You know, we're doing this today. Tomorrow's Earth Day. So, I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm going to see if I can make this thing work. It works. This is also the first time I've ever given a talk where I didn't bring any equipment. I sent my talk over to this wonderful couple, and they were like, just show up. I was like, oh no, this is frightening. So if anybody else in here has ever given talks, you'll know you never go anywhere without that USB in your back pocket, just in case, right? So I started my business back in '83 after graduating from UConn-Hort and getting a job working in a place that used a ton of chemicals, and I had to get a pesticide license and spray stuff in the greenhouse I was running. There are now things that are now illegal, and it really scared me. And so I just said, well, I'm just not going to do that anymore. I'm going to start my own business, and I'm going to do it organically. And there was nothing out there. You know, it was like the little engine that could, and everybody thought I was crazy. Now they think I'm like the grandmother of organic gardening in Connecticut, right? So thank you very much for that. So I'm going to try and explain to you a little bit about how I operate in my own yard and on a grander scale how we operate as a landscaping company. I started with $500 and a little Datsun pickup truck, which will age me. We were arguing about what Datsun became the other day. But, and now there's 27 employees in the business, 4 landscape crews, 3 designers, and I sold it to my employees last year, which is really cool. And I'm working for them, which is really fun, because I don't have to do all the hard, scary stuff. I just do the stuff I love. I live in Middletown on a couple of acres, and I tend it lovingly. I steward it. I love that term. So that's, my sister took that picture of me picking raspberries. I live in a neighborhood of a lot of homes that do not use organic methods. And I know they think I'm crazy when they see what I do. But on the other hand, they all get food, and they all get blueberries, and they all get flowers. And so they don't think I'm quite as crazy, I guess. I blend everything together. My talk is about everything is connected, and my garden contains flowers, vegetables, and herbs all blended together, because that's how I believe a garden should be grown. For example, in this picture, the yellow evening primrose is called a magic evening primrose, or a popper, and it was grown at the Mark Twain House, and the flowers at a certain time of the evening just go like this and open before your eyes, which is a reason for a party. And they seed around. So, you know, my yard is just full of stuff. So, you know, I put fennel and dill and zinnias in with food and flowers. I pulled a few pictures together to show you how ridiculous it is to have 18 raised beds. My soil is pure clay, so I had to raise up to grow food, plus about 20 containers, and I have a root cellar, so I keep dahlias, and I store my figs down in the cellar in the winter. So it's you know, and you'd never know it if you walked by my house, because it's a spaghetti lot, and it's long and skinny. It's not until you get in the back that you see it. You know, I put snapdragons with tomatoes, because tomatoes are pollinated by bumblebees, and snapdragons are beloved by bumblebees. So I start working connections right now in the spring. Everything I'm doing is intentional in terms of trying to connect the dots between all the different living creatures, both animal and plant in my yard, and insect. And I've been doing this for a long time, and I still don't know all the connections. So we should be in awe, really. And when you save land and you steward land, you know, you also have to start to get to know a deeper level of that land, which I'm sure you all do if you're working on the land. Eliminating invasives, I know, is probably one of the most important jobs that you do, and it's hard work, and there really is no easy way. On my property, I have what I call the back 40, which is, it was an old turkey farm in the hillside. You know, they dumped all the crockery and everything back there, but it was completely overgrown with bittersweet, multiflora rose, and Russian olive. Luckily, no knotweed. I have that at Natureworks. You know, we were in year 29 in our new location, and we still can't get rid of the knotweed. But it just shows up everywhere. But, and during some of the storms, my trees came down, and all the invasives were just covering everything. So I had it all chopped up, but I couldn't afford to have it all hauled away. So I had them stack all the trunks of the trees and everything down the slope in something called hugelkultur, which is you lay all your trees and branches, and then you cover it with organic matter, and eventually it all breaks down and you plant it. So I'm in year like 17 of that, and I'm not there yet, but I've got tier 1 pretty well organized, and tier 2 is pretty good too, and tier 3 is what I'm working on this year. So things that I do a lot of smothering. Thank God for cardboard, you know? I mean, during the pandemic, there's more cardboard than ever. I do some digging. I have a tool called a puller bear, which is a new version of the weed wrench. Do you guys use weed wrenches? My neighbors also think I'm crazy because I have my name etched in it. I got it from Kansas. It's the same principle. I use the flame weeder. I do use some horticultural vinegar, but not much. I actually tried to rent a herd of goats, which is a viable option. You can go online, rent a goat, rent a ruminant, and they look at your property on GPS and they decide whether it's big enough. But they said I didn't have a place for the goat herder to park in my driveway and live in his RV for the time the goats were there. My husband was like, that's okay, we don't need it, you know. So I'm like, forget that. But other places are doing this, so it's kind of interesting. So my goal is, it's not, I have to say my goal isn't to put 100% native plants in my yard, because I am a plant geek. And I was just at, what I just found out is my birthday twin, Judith King's yard today. She is also a plant geek. So I love horticulture. And I don't necessarily have all natives, but I do try and strive for 70% natives, which is a really high bar for a horticulturist. Right, Steve Silk, right? That's hard. Because if you love plants and you want to go for 70% native, you got to really work on it. So I do make lists and all that. So, but natives are so important because the insects of our planet have co-evolved with the plants. And I'm sure that you guys have all read Doug Tallamy. And have you ever seen him? Anybody seen Doug Tallamy speak? Oh my God. He's amazing. I mean, he's just the most incredible speaker. I was lucky enough to have dinner with him before he spoke at the last time he was at Connecticut Hort. He says that nature's best hope is privately held land. And his answer to the fact that we need more native plants to support the insect population that is going extinct, he says it's not the government lands and not a government program. It's private lands linked together. And so these are the 3 books that he's written, and you got to read Doug Tallamy. I'm telling you, every single person I've turned on to him is like, thank you, thank you, thank you. And people now come in saying, I've been converted, and they are ripping out plants of their yard, and they want natives. It's fabulous. So anyway, he says that insects are specialists. Many of them are specialists that share an evolutionary history with the plants that they feed on. And they've co-evolved. So when you take a plant away that an insect must have, the insect goes away. Now the bird that eats that insect and the hawk that eats the bird, and on it goes. It's like a Jenga game. Everything comes tumbling down, and we don't know, because we don't know all the connections, but everything is somehow connected. So it's really hard to live in a neighborhood where your neighbors use a lot of poisons, and you know, you've got bluebirds, and you're like, they don't know where the line is. You're like, don't go over there. you know, and this, you know, all the animals, and my husband, who's very sensitive to this, he's like, oh, you know, I'm like, I don't know what to tell you, you know, I can't really put up an electric fence or something, you know. But, so, I mean, we're very aware of it, and a lot of the neighbors are starting to turn around because I put pretty things out by the street and they appreciate it. What Doug Tallamy says, and this is why oaks are so important, if you put an oak in your backyard, it supports 557 species of caterpillars, which he calls Lepidoptera. If you put a ginkgo tree from China, it supports 4 species. So, and the same is true of the white calorie pears, the Bradford pears that you see all around. They support like 1 or 2 species of native insects. So when you know what I know and you drive around and you're looking for natives and you see a lot of non-natives that you know are not supporting insects, it's hard to drive around. I mean, sometimes I'm envious of people that don't see it. And then when I explain it to Tony and then he sees it, he goes, I really wish you didn't tell me about knotweed, because now I see knotweed everywhere I go. I'm like, you know, welcome to my world. How about garlic mustard, right? Bittersweet. I mean, I do garden consultations for people that buy houses and they don't know what bittersweet is. How can you not? I'm trying to be really polite. I'm like, well, let me tell you, it's going to kill that tree and then it's going to kill that tree. You know, pull it up, the roots are orange, you know. Unbelievable. They just don't know how. Nobody taught them. They weren't born with this knowledge and nobody taught them. And they buy a house, especially a young couple, completely naive, and now they're all over the internet reading about native plants. Before they take out the invasives, they're online buying bare root plugs of native plants, and they're going to plant them into a mugwort meadow. And you're like, where do I start with this, really? I mean, really. Like, how do I begin, right? So, you know, it's hard when you're facing up to this on the front lines of retail garden centers and garden consulting, and you want to give them hope, but you're like, let's just back it up a little bit, you know. So it is interesting. Because all plants don't support wildlife equally, natives are important. That's spicebush, lindera, which is blooming now in all the wet woods. I mean, it's one of my favorite plants in the world. I just think it's the greatest. We have at Natureworks, we actually have sassafras. Both sassafras and spicebush, lindera benzoin, are larval food plants of that guy. Now, talk about getting kids interested, man. Those aren't eyes, you know, those are markers. That guy was found on our sassafras, and one of my employees comes running up to me and says, look at this. I'm like, oh, yes, that's the spicebush swallowtail caterpillar. She goes, no, it's not. How can you know that? You don't know that. I said, okay, let's look it up. You know, I said, I actually teach this. Oh, okay. But it turns out it was on sassafras, not spicebush. They're both hosts. Now, where I live, I have a huge walnut tree, and certain plants don't grow beneath walnuts, but spicebush does. And I just put in a spicebush grove. It took me a while because I have mud, clay, and it's really hard digging, but I did it. So that's the connection. So not only will it be the food for the butterfly, it also produces summer berries that the birds like. And you'll see them. And what the problem is when you drive around and you see spicebush now blooming, and then you see burning bush or barberry coming in, you just want to get out of your car and go, no, where's my polar bear? You know, I want to pull all this. And there's just a limit to how much of this you can do. So it's really hard to drive around. And I have one of those newfangled cars that like beeps at you if you go over a line. It's always for plants. It's like, you'd think I would be looking at something pretty, but no, it's always like I'm looking at the plants, you know. Violets. Now, my front lawn has violets in it, and I have an organic lawn, and I'm proud of the flowers in my lawn, and it drives my neighbors crazy. And my husband mows, and I'm like, don't mow the violets. What? Like, just mow around them. Are you kidding? No, just mow around them for a while, because they're edible. They're on the daffodil cake tonight. You know, they're medicinal. They're a larval food plant of a butterfly. Now, the picture in the middle, it's not that great of a picture, but that's my garden right now. Violets are allowed to be a ground cover layer in my garden. Instead of mulching, I'm mulching with plants. And people are like, oh, I would let them in my garden, they'll take over. That's the point. You know, I'm not getting any younger here, you know. This is another cool plant. This is Zizia. And this is one of the only native plants that is the larval food plant of the swallowtail butterfly. Most of the larval food plants listed on, I had some handouts emailed to you. I hope you got them. One of them is a really cool handout about larval food plants of butterflies, which will make you realize the benefit of thistles and stinging nettles and plantain and docks. Things that you think of as weeds are all larval food plants of certain butterflies. This plant is phenomenal. If you're trying to come up with a native perennial for woodland gardens, it has a yellow flower opening in May. The leaves are beautiful. They don't disappear. They don't go down. I've been getting it to just spread by just letting the seeds dry and spreading them around. So, and I see it on the side of the road. That's the other thing. I break for plants, so I pull over. Oh, there's Zizia. Like, who the hell would know that's Zizia, right? I'm out there, and I look like I'm peeing in the bushes. But no, I'm on the ground, like, taking pictures of Zizia on the side of the road on Route 17 in Durham. It's like, okay, you know. So anyway, these are the connections that you may not know. You may look at this and go, well, it kind of looks like who knows what. But if you don't want to have, like, fennel or parsley or dill, you know, they're not native and you want a native plant, this is one. There's another really cool plant. This is buttonbush. If you have wet areas that you're preserving, I drive by buttonbush swamps and they have these orbs of flowers in late July and early August that are covered with pollinators and butterflies, and they're just fun. They look like Sputniks, you know, and I plant them in my yard because I have wet clay. And they love my yard. So it's just an amazing native plant for the wetlands. At Natureworks, we raise monarch butterflies. We're kind of crazy about this. And we take them on the road for educational purposes. We usually go to the Durham Fair for 4 days and man a booth and show people all the life stages and release the butterflies and tag them for Monarch Watch. And we're an organic garden center, and our milkweed and all of our Asclepias, which is the larval food plant of monarchs, is guaranteed clean, because if it isn't, they'll die. So, excuse me, you can't go to any old garden center and buy Asclepias if you don't know it's neonicotinoid free, which is a systemic that gets into the soil. Your caterpillars will go into convulsions and die before your eyes. And if you've been collecting the eggs, which believe me, you need glasses to do, and raising them from eggs, and then this happens, you will be furious. So it's really important that you know your suppliers. So when you're buying plants, don't fall for the label that says, these plants are protected from bugs. That's not what you want. If a plant isn't being eaten by a bug, it's just not fulfilling its purpose. That's what it's here for. I mean, you may think it's here to be pretty, but it's here to feed something. You, a bunny, a bug. So, you know, we preach it and we teach it and we talk about it all the time. It's really easy to convince the younger generation. They're like, you know, I say to them, your grandchildren are going to be like, did you know that everybody used to poison their food and then eat it? And then they do it to the lawn and play on it? Really? You know, like, ha-ha, that was so long ago. Ha-ha-ha, you know. I mean, that's how I kind of get people thinking. I just sort of joke around, but then they take it seriously. And the plants that you plant really matter, talking about connections. You know, I heard a wonderful talk by Kelly Norris, and he basically said, just plant more asters. They are some of the longest lived herbaceous plants, and they're vital for late pollinators and vital for migrating monarchs. So get to know asters. I sell asters in our garden center in the spring, and they look like a tuft of nothing in a pot. But I've educated my customers to ask for them. Ask for asters, you know, I should use that in my email. Ask for asters, because if you put them in now, they'll be big in the fall. And they're very easy to grow, and they come in blue, which mums don't, so it's really fun. This is my yard, that's my little house. My house is from the 1800s, and these are all asters that have sort of seeded around. That's milkweed, That's to drive the guy next door crazy who has the perfect lawn, the milkweed. It's like, he's like, what? You know, I'm like, no, it's for the butterflies. You know, your grandson is going to be watching me with the butterflies. So I have asters of all kinds. It's one of my favorite plants. So this is where I began in Stony Creek, and that's what I learned from, was Organic Gardening magazine. So those were the days, my friend. There was nothing. Now we have NOFA, and I was the president of this group for a while. Don't ask me why I didn't have a farm, but I was a gardener. I helped them and teach for their organic land care certification program, which is a 4-day training program. Then you get tested and you get certified. And they have a directory of organic land care practitioners who have, you know, taken the course. So it's really good to know that somebody has this certification, because there's a lot of greenwashing out there. You know, and if somebody has both an organic and a non-organic lawn service, I question, you know, the commitment to the movement. So this is something good to know. They have great website, great educational events. So I've done many workshops called the Lawn Reduction Initiative Day, and I have the Lawn Elimination Worksheet, where I tell people, okay, so, you know, tell me what you need your lawn for, and what else can we possibly do? They're basically bee deserts. They're just not, it doesn't make sense. You know, I've long maintained that the American lawn is one of the greatest mass brainwashings of all time. If you read the book, A Man's Turf, you'll understand a little more about it. This is a project I'm currently working on in Brantford. I love this couple. They live in a little neighborhood, and they're reducing all but the strip of lawn that you see left. And that's my spray paint showing the path. We put up the fence, we put in raised beds for food. And I said, you know, I don't want to ruin your like resale value, you know, by just taking out your lawn. He goes, oh no, this is what we want. We want a pollinator garden. So he came in the other day to pick up some stuff, and I said, so what do your neighbors think? And he goes, they're all like, well, I hope it's going to be a pollinator garden. I'm like, are you kidding? Like, they totally got it? And he said, yeah, and he's going to use it to teach them. And you can see in that lower left picture, we used a sod cutter, and then we flipped the sod upside down. And then we're going to put cardboard and mulch on that one bed, and the bed two beds are going to be cardboarded and mulched all spring and planted in the summer. And the ones we're going to plant now, we just desodded and used that sod to build soil in the other beds. So yeah, it's quite the excitement in a neighborhood that people appreciate what we're doing. So if you want to reduce lawn, the key has to be to connect. If you have disparate parts of land trust land and you want to increase habitat value and pollinator corridors in your town, connecting the dots is the key. So ways of doing that are ways of breaking up the lawn and putting in something else, whether it be hedgerows and thickets, mini meadows, pollinator strips, you know, evergreen groves, something. So it's not just land trust land, it's homeowner land too, and then figuring out ways to connect the dots. And that's what's important. This woman, Catherine Zimmerman, is a really good resource. She actually did a project with Doug Tallamy. It's called themeadowproject.com. I've seen her speak. We have her books, we have her video, her movie on how to do meadows. Meadows are not easy. You know, you have to know what you're doing. Nobody wants to hand weed a meadow, so you really need to do it right. You know, they're also extremely good for all creatures. And what you can do is, if you're afraid of ticks, is to just mow wide pathways through the meadows, rather than just saying, oh, just walk in there, it'll be fine. You know, so make it so it's, you know, easy. But this is also a possibility for yards, is pollinator strips. Areas where it's not the whole yard, it's not a meadow, it's not too big, but it's a strip dedicated to the pollinators. And that's sort of like the entryway to this, which I think people should do. That's one of my favorite. It's actually an annual called Bee's Friend, Phacelia. That's a really fun flower to grow for the bees. So it's the size of the habitats that matter and the fragmentation that ruins it. So, that's the hardest part about preserving land and the hardest part about upping the ante and how a town can provide for pollinators and wildlife and birds is the connections. So it's really important to connect as much land as possible, and it's gonna have to be done with the help of homeowners. It can't be done just with land that you preserve. You have to get homeowners on board. Going organic is critical in my world. We don't use Roundup, never use Roundup. We don't use neonicotinoids. We practice deep organics, where we hardly spray any organic spray at all, because with the more you encourage beneficial insects and you decrease your spraying, the more work the whole thing, the beneficial insects do, and the more into balance your yard or your garden center becomes. And we notice less and less product being sold as our customers get more and more into understanding how to create a balanced ecosystem. If you're raising monarchs, you can't spray at all, because they're like the canary in the coal mine. Our neighbor sprayed Roundup on the driveway of the parking lot next door, and we didn't know it. We collected eggs from the milkweed in our gardens, and they all went into convulsions and died, and we figured out that's what happened. We had somebody lose all their monarchs because they had sprayed Febreze in the house where they were raising them. Think about that, right? Or the dish soap that they use to wash the cages, they're the canary in the coal mine, Another thing is, we sell organic sprays targeted for pests, but if you spray in the morning, which is what I was taught, there's tons of pollinators flying. You have to spray at dusk. And this woman is a fabulous resource, Dr. Stoner. And you have to ask questions like, I have 21 blueberry plants. I use them as landscape plants. They're fabulous. They're native. They're wonderful. And I don't net them. But I do get these fall webworms. And I found out, and they were on the button bush, which is right next to the blueberries. And I found out if I poke a hole in the webs, the birds go in and eat the webworms. And people are like, oh, cut them off and burn them. I'm like, look, So, I'm always trying to figure this out. I pour boiling water on random stands of poison ivy if it's not going to kill the plants around it. So I look crazy with these boiling water kettles and stuff, but, toads and frogs are a really good sign of a healthy habitat because they breathe through their skins. And, if you don't have these creatures on a property, it's a sick property. And soil itself is part of the carbon cycle. We see the movie Kiss the Earth. Anybody ever seen that movie? It's a very cool movie. Carbon is stored in organic matter in the soil. Tilling releases more carbon than lawn mowing, right? So, creating an organic ecosystem on every piece of land that you steward has got to be the way to go. And don't say you can't do it, because you can. Because anybody that tells me you can't do it, I'm like, just talk to me and I'll give you a solution. Even if it might be a little harder, but it's worth it because you're committed to the future of the planet. Clover. If I had $1 for every time I get this question, okay, so you do organic lawns, how do I get rid of clover organically? Well, you don't, because clover is a legume and it fixes nitrogen and it feeds the lawn. And in the old days, clover was a part of every lawn seed mixture, and groundskeepers at the New York Botanical Garden were judged on the ratio of clover to lawn grass to see if they got it right, to reduce the amount of inputs. And then, if you read the book, A Man's Turf, you'll realize how right after World War II, all that went away, and you were judged on how green your lawn was as a status symbol. So it's crazy, really, if you think about it. Bluets and crocuses and violets, and I have prunella, and I have all kinds of stuff in my lawn. I love my lawn. My lawn's just like a mini meadow, this big, This is what my lawn looks like right now with the violets. And yes, there's some dandelions, which makes the neighbors crazy. But it's like, that today I was outside and every dandelion had a pollinator on it. It was crazy to watch. So you have to learn to live with some weeds. You have to realize that Some of the plants that you may have in the past been afraid of are your most valuable assets. You don't have to use Canadian goldenrod, but there's 20 native goldenrods you can choose from that might be better, that would feed these late pollinators. Solidagos, you wouldn't believe how many different solidagos we sell at Natureworks, and I thought 10 years ago I couldn't give goldenrod away because everybody thought they got hay fever from it, and they don't, because it's insect pollinated. It's not wind pollinated. That's ragweed. So it's like, nope, that's not true, you know. So now people realize it's deer resistant, it's durable, it's root resistant, you know, it's a great plant. So back when I was in school, this is what I studied. I learned about the aesthetic functions of plants and the landscape functions of plants. Nobody talked about ecological functions or what ecological services do your plants perform. And then I read this book, which is a collaboration between Rick Dark, who I adore, and Doug Tallamy. And that's what changed me. I was like, I realized I was designing all wrong. They were looking good and I was selling a lot of jobs, but in my head and in my heart, it was wrong. So the idea is to look for these ecological functions and see how many of them your plants can fulfill that you're choosing. So, for example, Sambucus canadensis, or elderberry, is like the poster child for ecological function. It's like the flat flowers are umbels, and they attract beneficial insects that parasitize the bad bugs. The berries, of course, are beloved by birds and by humans. I make a syrup out of it for winter. Chickens eat them too. My neighbor's chickens eat them when they're dropping. The stems are hollow, and 70% of our native insects, our native pollinators, are tunnel nesting, and they nest into hollow stems. And they have a suckering habit, which in the old days, in the early landscape days, suckering, oh my God, that means like every 3 years I have to dig up the suckers. No, we want suckering. We want hedgerows. We want thickets. We want to shelter creatures. So this is my elderberry stem that had life in it when I picked it. I also leave a lot of plant stems up over the winter, which also drives my neighbor crazy, I'm sure. But that's where a lot of these creatures live. And then when I go to cut them down, I leave them at 15 inches. And in case the native pollinators haven't come out of the tunnels yet. It has to be a week of 50-degree days, which I'm not sure we've had a full week of anything this year. So I also do something else. In the back part of my yard, where there's a lot of space, I don't haul to the compost and then bring compost back. I chop and drop. And it saves me so much time. So that's what my garden looks like right now in some parts of my yard. And it's a real hard sell for landscape customers. Like, I don't think so, you know. But, you know, for your own purposes, anytime you can do this kind of thing, you're reducing the labor, and you're also giving a lot more creatures somewhere to live. Like pussy willows. I, of course, have a lot of pussy willows because they grow in wet clay and they grow under walnuts. And I have a lot of different kinds. But they are in bloom really early. And then the native pussy willows are the larval food plant of mourning cloak and viceroy butterflies. And when they go from catkin to flower, that's the signal for these butterflies. Like, come on, get with it, go lay your eggs on these plants. So of course, my willow plants are covered with holes, and that's good. I would never, blanket spray anything, but I would never spray any willows. So the pollinators are very diversified. It's not just bees. Heather Holm, who wrote a really good book on bees, just wrote an award-winning book on wasps, which it's like getting used to goldenrod and dandelions. Let's embrace wasps, right? Moths, beetles, bats. Ever stay out at night and watch for the bats? So they're all a part of this. And you guys don't have a pollinator pathway in Farmington, do you? I looked on the map, and you aren't on the map. Hello. The thing about the pollinator pathway is that it partners with land trusts, town governments, and the people of the town, Girl Scout troops, anybody, And they get everybody on board. And the pollinator pathway movement has been mind-boggling for our garden center. People come in and they've downloaded all their little lists. And they know exactly what they want, even if they've never seen the plant. And it's everywhere. And I'm giving talks about starting pollinator pathways and talking when they're having pollinator pathway tours. It's a total paradigm shift in the way we sell plants now, just because of this. And the goal is to connect the dots between the pollinator gardens. And this is a really old book that's fabulous, Noah's Garden by Sarah Stein, and she talked about it way back then, how you connect the dots like jigsaw pieces. So by getting the town involved, and the land trusts, and the other groups, conservation groups, and homeowners, that's the secret, that's the key right there. So, we're losing a lot of bees. Nobody really paid any attention until NPR talked about the demise of the rusty-patched bumblebee. And most people didn't even know what it was, but they really felt bad. And so all of a sudden, everybody's talking about bees dying, and it's really important because without bees, we have no food. This is a fabulous resource, the Xerxes Society, absolutely mind-bogglingly full of information. That's a fabulous book. This is one of my favorite plants, Pacaria, which formerly Senecio, spreads like crazy, in bloom soon, tons of pollinators. Mountain mint in sun, fabulous plant, covered with wasps and pollinators that you just want to make a movie out of it. St. John's wort, another one I do videos of, because it's like going with bees, This is a hydrangea arborescens in my yard. It's a lace cap type, filled with pollinators. Annabelle, a double, nothing. They can't there's nothing to do. They can't get in there. So single flowers are good, double flowers are bad. And so the whole thing gets turned around because beneficial insects are also another piece of that puzzle. And with beneficial insects, they are also coming in for basically the same kinds of things. There's two kinds. There's the parasites and the predators, like ladybugs. Parasites would be parasitic wasps, like the ones that lay their eggs in tomato hornworms. The predators need daisies. Now, who can't find daisies that they can grow? And you may not even think of something like a goldenrod as a daisy, but it is millions of tiny daisies in there. And the parasites like umbels, flat tops, okay? And that's what Zizia sideways. That's what Zizia is for, and parsley, Queen Anne's lace, that's invasive, but this is lovage. That's a close-up of all the tiny little beneficial wasps in my vegetable garden. So I put tons of herbs everywhere. They're in all my gardens. And then the other piece of this is that you've got to have succession. So you've got to learn what blooms early, what blooms late, what blooms really late, both for the beneficial insects and for the pollinators. So that's another kind of piece of the puzzle. So what I did with the handout that I sent to you, which is this brand new pollinator handout, is on the front page is a lot of this stuff I just said, and the back page is month by month what's in bloom in Connecticut. That's a pollinator plant. So it's a useful tool. It's all scientific names, sorry, but they're the real names. So you're just gonna have to deal. Same thing with birds. I know you guys are talking about bird gardens. Birds are really, really in danger from lawn chemicals. I mean, it's crazy how many lawn chemicals kill birds. Also, bumblebees overwinter in the ground, and lawn chemicals can kill bumblebees. And the bumblebees are out. They're finally out now. I saw them all day today. So bumblebees pollinate by something called buzz pollination. They get underneath a blueberry flower, they release their wings, and they go, it's called sonication, and the pollen rains down on them. And tomatoes are the same way. They cannot be pollinated by honeybees. So if you want to get inside somebody's head who's using lawn chemicals, you go, hey, no bumblebees, no tomatoes, no blueberries, right? Okay? So get with the program. And that helps a little bit, because they don't get pollinated by honeybees, which are not native. And a lot of our native bees nest in the ground, and everybody that looks at a yellow thing coming out of the ground thinks it's a yellow jacket, even if it's April, which it isn't. So it's really important. That book about pollinators by Heather Holm is so valuable because you start to, I don't know who they all are, but I know some of them, you know. The other thing is lightning bugs. You know, I have tons of lightning bugs in my yard, and two of my neighbors do too, but the guy that uses poisons has 0. And I go out at night in a hot summer evening, and I'm in my way back, in the back 40, and I walk over. I know he has a camera too. And I'm like, you know, they live in the ground for the first 2 years of their life. And then they come out for 2 weeks, and what do you think that light flickers for? Mating. And then they go underground, start another cycle. So all the stuff we remember as kids goes away if you use poisons. This was something I did for the flower show to talk about habitats and to encourage people to plant for birds. And basically, if you want to create a desert for the birds, take away the trees and shrubs and vines and replace it with lawn, which is what you see in all the neighborhoods, and everybody thinks it's a status symbol. So it's really important. Grow birdseed gardens, leave seed pods up. Did you know that some of the sunflowers are bred to be pollen free, so they handle flower arrangements and they don't drop and stain the tablecloth? So I did the opposite. I looked for the pollen sunflowers and I made a list and put it in my email because I'm like, you know, so I mean, I can see why they did that, but for me, I want pollen people, I do, you know. So in leaving seed heads up over the winter, if you feed the birds, or even if you don't feed the birds, if you leave stems up and you leave leaves down and you leave seed heads up, the birds live in your yard. They go crazy. And berries, there's so many wonderful berries we can grow that are native, and even some that aren't, that are useful. You know, shadbush is just about to bloom now, if it's not already blooming. Bayberry and sumac, people are so afraid of sumac, but staghorn sumac is actually vital for birds. Black chokeberry, the most popular shrub at Natureworks last year. Who knew? Aronia melanocarpa. It's just a great native berry plant. And you can make juice from the berries that's more of an antioxidant than elderberries and blueberries. Sumac, you know, this is staghorn sumac. You take the flower heads and you soak them in water and make sumac lemonade. It's true, I tried it, it's amazing. But you know, not every property has room for this, but if you have a property that has room for this, leave some, because it's important. They all have their place in the scheme of things. So this does not do a thing for any of these creatures, none of them. Leaving the leaves, it's so obvious to me. You have woods. Leave the leaves. Why do you think they call them leaves, people, right? It's so obvious to me. I don't know why nobody's ever thought of this before, right? Leave them. I mean, I have customers who have guys come in with blowers and blow out their woods every fall. Do you know how much life lives in that leaf litter? Never mind the pollution and the noise pollution. And then they bring back mulch. Like, think about it. Like, what's mulch from? The trees, right? I mean, hello. So, you know, this is also all from the Xerxes Society. If you can use them to help you to enlighten people about some of these things. So yeah, it's a different way of looking at the world, and being a 40-year in business landscape designer to try and work with clients and explain this to them. What I like about being semi-retired and having sold my business to my employees is I can pick and choose the customers that I work the best with. You know, this is what I want to do now. This is the kind of landscape design I want to do, and these are the kind of people I want to work with. So if somebody wants the opposite, you know, there's other people they can find. So leaving the stems up, they're beautiful. The birds eat them in the snow. I mean, Joe Pye weed in the winter, what's wrong with that, right? Nothing. And brush piles. I have 2 brush piles in my yard, and all the creatures run into the brush piles when the hawk flies over, you know? I can only imagine who's living in there. And they're purposeful brush piles. It's not like they happened. I piled up the brush. And I had white pines come down on my way back. It didn't bother anything. And when the tree guy came, he was also an enlightened soul. And I said, Chris, why don't we just leave a trunk? He goes, yeah. And we did. And the hawk sits on it, and the robin sings on it. There's one little branch, and the robin sings on it, and the cardinal sings on it. And it's like this promontory for all these creatures. And, I'm sure that some of the neighbors are like, why didn't she cut that down? But to me, it's not gonna fall on anything other than the way back, So it is amazing to look at it this way. So I'm hoping that I have kind of inspired you to take the message out to the town and maybe try and find a group of people willing to start a pollinator pathway, working in tandem with the land trust, and use the handouts that I gave you. Our website is under construction. There's usually 50 to 60 handouts on our website, which you are free to use. It says it right on there. Share all the information that you have with people, and slowly, you're going to see things change. Because, when I started Natureworks in '83 and I was organic, there was no organic food in the stores. There was no brands of organic fertilizers. It didn't look like it belonged on a, tobacco farm or something. I mean, there was nothing. And now it's gone mainstream to the degree that I hoped it would happen, but I didn't really know. So if we can do it, we're on an acre on a busy road, anybody can do it. I mean, really, you couldn't think of a more unlikely place to have a habitat than where we are located, and there it is. So it's up to us, to change the world. One garden, one piece of land at a time. So I do have if anybody wants to get our email, you can go on our website and sign up. I have some sign-up sheets if you want to get our email. I write an email once a week. You get it, A couple of people here get it. And I just basically spend the weekend in my garden and think about what I'm going to talk about. And there's always something in there about, like this week, it was 12 things you can do for Earth Day kind of thing. I mean, it's just a great way to connect the dots between all the customers that we have and help them to usher the next generation along. So thank you very much for inviting me. I hope I didn't put you to sleep. Yeah. If you have any questions, here I am, yes. Oh, yes, come to the mic.
So I've been in a little bit of an argument with some people lately about tick control and tick and mosquito control. So you get the sign, it says, Tick Ranger, Mosquito Joe, all of these. And they are telling you that they're putting organic sprays.
They're putting cedar down.
They are putting cedar down, correct.
Right.
It's an oil.
Right.
It's ineffective because it also washes right off.
Cedar, we use a cedar spray on ourselves. It's from Neptune's Harvest. We use it on our exposed body parts. We have used the cedar spray if we get to a property that's infested with ticks, because it repels them. It just makes them go away. I don't believe in blanket spraying anything, and I know it's organic, but so is pyrethrum, and I wouldn't spray that.
The sort of corollary to my question is, what is your opinion of tick tubes?
Tick tubes are probably safer to use, the Daminix tubes.
Yes.
I know they do contain a poison. We have had, as landscapers, we've had serious issues with Lyme disease. We had one guy who almost died. He got swelling brain, and he's permanently disabled from it. And I went to the mat with the unemployment compensation because they said, you can't prove where he got the tick. And he, so we have a protocol for ticks that is so powerful. We just basically tuck in our pants and our socks. We have the cedar spray available. We tell people we don't mess around. So we will spray an area if we're going to work in it, but I personally don't believe in blanket spraying anything ever, and it's tricky. And that's why if you have a meadow, wide pathways. And You know, the issue is that kids are petrified of nature now. Like, you know, we were releasing butterflies, and we had a kid freak out when we put the butterfly on her finger. She was afraid of it. And it just made me cry. You know, and yes, ticks are dangerous. I'm not convinced that spray is the way to go. I was in a neighborhood, the guy was doing almost every yard in the neighborhood when I was there Thursday. So, you know, I don't know, not Thursday, Wednesday. But, you know, there is no easy answer. To me, it's protect yourself. You know, wear white pants tucked into white socks with rubber boots. I have white cotton shirts, you know, just protect yourself and be aware. You know, I also have a blanket thing going with my doctor. If I have a tick in me, I just call her and she sends me an antibiotic pill, you know, because I've had Lyme disease about 4 times, you know. So there isn't an easy answer. A lot of it is land management and barberry removal. You know that ticks breed in barberries. One of my best friends just inherited 40 acres of beautiful land in Lyme, and it's 3 acres of field and 37 acres of barberry woods. And she's like, you have to come walk down here and look at this waterfall. I'm like, oh, are you kidding me? And I did, like a fool, and then I had to clean, you know, check myself. I mean, so barberries, that's what a weed wrench is for, and that's what a flame weeder's for. With barberry, you cut it, and then when it resprouts, you flame it. And it's one of the few plants you can do that to. That was a Yukon study. So I don't have an easy answer, but I wouldn't do it to my yard. Let's just say that. So, another question? Anybody? Yes.
If there was a property that wasn't very organic and that person wanted to come clean, how long would it take to become organic? Asking for a friend.
You can go organic in one season, but you're not going to build a balanced habitat in the first year because your soil's dead. I mean, soil is a living organism, and when you use chemical fertilizers, it kills the organic matter in the soil because the organisms digest all the organic matter, and then when there's no more organic matter, there's no more organisms, and so then you use chemical fertilizers, which is like drinking coffee instead of eating food. So the first thing you would do is get your soil tested, and the second thing you would do is start adding organic life to the soil. And at first it will be difficult because your soil has been on life support. You know, when you think about chemical fertilizer, it's basically, you know, instantly absorbed into the plant and then instantly washed away when it rains. It's soluble. Whereas organic fertilizers feed the soil. Then the life in the soil breaks down the food and gives it back to the plants slowly, which is the way, like, who feeds the forest? Nobody. The leaves, right? So, I mean, who feeds the weeds on the side of the road? Nobody. But nobody's cutting the weeds down, taking them all away, raking all the debris away, and making it a barren space either. So it takes a few years, and it takes a mental, psychological adjustment. When we first tried, I don't really care that much about lawns, but I have to pay attention because, you know, I'm the spokesperson for my business. My husband, however, this is the first house he's ever owned. We've been in this house for 18 years, and he wants the lawn to look good. I'm like, oh my God, here we go, right? So he said, and I'll do it, which of course he won't because he's not a gardener, but he tried, and then we hired somebody. And it took a few years to build the soil up to the point where the lawn was growing thick. And this fall, they took another soil test because I said, you know, I read the weeds. I said, we've got sorrel, which is an indication the soil is acidic. And you limed, but when's the last time you tested? And I listed the weeds, and I know the guy, he's my friend. And I said, that means compaction, we need more potassium, blah, blah, blah. And the soil test showed it. And so the first thing he did this spring was he came back with the second round of lime and then some wake up minerals before he puts down corn gluten. So it takes a while. But, you know, you could put out a sign that says, wildlife habitat in progress, stay tuned, instead of, you know, I mean, and the other thing I did in my yard, because my neighborhood is extremely conservative. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So I kept like the Pachysandra and the ferns, and then I have a daylily border by the road, and it kind of looks like everybody else's yard until you look close. But then you get a hint when you look around the back. But I tried to keep keep it as in tune until they all got to know me. And now they know me, so they're like, show me your garden. I'm like, well, okay, So the other thing is to do tidy edges. It's a really good trick. If you want to do like a pollinator patch, edge it. Run a bead of mulch on it, or put a little low hedge around it so it looks like you're paying attention, It's the best trick in the book. I mean, really, you could have a meadow that's full of everything on planet Earth, including dandelions, and nobody would care if you edge it. And run a bead of mulch, 1 bag of mulch, That's why they have boxwood hedges in England, right? Because the gardens in the middle are chaos. But no, there's all these little tidy borders, and you think, oh, these people, they've got it together. Well, if you really look, the gardens are full of stuff. They're very diverse, so, yes.
I have a question from Paula online about
good.
how to deal with poison ivy.
Okay, so I do not use Roundup because I feel that it's carcinogenic. We have a protocol for poison ivy where we understand the weed. It has urushiol oil on the surface of the soil, of the leaves, and the stems and the roots. In the winter, even in the fall, right now, if there's no leaves, you can still get poison ivy. So what we do is we use 90% isopropyl alcohol in spray bottles. We have them in every vehicle. We have rubber gloves. I have poison ivy pulling clothes, rubber boots, and dedicated tarps. And if we have to pull it, we pull it. One person is pulling it, and one person puts it on the tarp. And then that person disinfects all tools with the rubbing alcohol, sprays their boots, sprays their pants, sprays the tarp, sprays the wheelbarrow handles. They're responsible to get rid of the urushiol oil. And when you get a new crew person, they're like, oh, I don't get it. We're like, well, we don't care. Because if you give it to us, we're going to kill you. And then we're going to bury you in a garden and nobody's going to dig you up, So, I mean, you have to learn the protocol. I do use horticultural vinegar. I've used Burnout. I've used others, but it doesn't work on old poison ivy. I will take a kettle of water and pour it on a root. I do a ton of smothering. I mean, literally just pile on the cardboard boxes and pile on the organic matter. And that works too. It takes time though. And then when you pull it up, if there's any roots left, you can still get it. So you've always got to be prepared. We all have kits in our vehicles. And we also use Technu, which if you don't use it right, it won't work. Technu all Technu does is it cuts the urushiol oil. So does rubbing alcohol. Technu, you have to rub it on for 2 minutes dry. You don't wash with it like soap. You rub it on for 2 minutes dry. Count, happy birthday to you or whatever they say, 3 times. And then you wash it off. Then, after that, I get the Fells Naphtha laundry soap out of the little tin in my car, and I do one more wash with that. And it works. We won't go into a completely infested forest because that's just not a good use of our time. There are 3 companies in Connecticut that pull it and eradicate it safely. And one of them's called the Gloved Hand. I can't remember what the others are. We have them in our referral lists. And believe me, I would love to say I could use Roundup, but I won't do it. It's a principle thing. And I won't do it, and I won't let my employees do it. And that's why we get good employees. They travel from far away to work at Natureworks because they know they're going to be using safe methods. And that's the dirty secret of this industry, really, is there's a lot of chemicals and poisons that these people are asked to use, a lot of times without protective clothing. I mean, if you're going to use Roundup and you're not covered, you're a fool. I watched my neighbors out there spraying the weeds with sandals on. I'm like, not good, And now you're seeing the lawsuits and the cases about it. And the same thing with lawn chemicals that are now linked to Parkinson's. Have you noticed there's like an epidemic? They're linked to Parkinson's. Again, my neighbor just had an Easter egg hunt, and he just had his lawn treated. My husband was horrified. I'm like, don't go out there. I mean, really, they're having an Easter egg hunt for their son's first birthday. Like, let's not go there. I mean, they love us, but this will put an end to our friendship, But he was like, I don't know how they can do that. I said, they don't even get it, you know. So it's really hard to be me in some ways. Now I've just dumped my brain on your lap, and so now you're going to think like this too. Ha ha ha! Right? Anyway, thank you.
Thank you so much, Nancy. That was amazing. The talk has been taped, so we'll be sending it out in case there were tidbits that you didn't write down, and there was so much in there that was amazing, and we want to know. So thank you, Nancy, for coming tonight. Really appreciate it. I just wanted to do one little quick thing. I want to thank Francie Brown Holmes for stepping up this year to be the interim president of the Land Trust at a time that, this year has been unprecedented, I think, for the Land Trust for a lot of reasons. And she came to the helm with no question. She just got right in, and with her lovely and amazing, brilliant spirit, stepped in and has taken us to a place that's more organized, because I have a lot of bubbles out here, and she can help with getting it together and more real, but also very creative and beautiful. So we want to thank her, and I want to bring Francie up. Thank you, Francie Brown Holmes.
Thank you. This is where wearing a mask is sometimes better because, thank you, really. I appreciate that from everybody. So that's beautiful. Well, I wanted to end with a really, actually very timely, very appropriate, very fitting quote by Margaret Mead. But before I do that, I wanted to just say thank you to Sam and Mariah for doing this live streaming, and really such professional. And thank you to our volunteers, Diane Nelson and Kathy Wadsworth and Tim Smith, for helping us with all of the food and wine and beverages. And then I just also wanted to say right after, please have some dessert because it's all waiting on the table. And I think Mary Lou, where are you, Mary Lou, made this special cake. She left, okay. But anyway, they're amazing cakes, and there's a daffodil cake over there. Okay, so, but here's the quote that I'd like to send us all off on, which is by Margaret Mead. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world, because indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Thank you.